Sir Ian Saxby.
Thank you, Sir Christopher, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chair. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank my right honourable friend, the member for Presili, Pembrokeshire, for securing today's important debate. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to really reinforce and reiterate so much of what he said, and actually much of what the honourable member for Aberavon has also just said. I set up the all-party parliamentary group for the Celtic Sea because the opportunities presented from the Celtic Sea were quite apparent. But some of the disjoint that we've already heard discussed, and actually much, as you've seen, many of my Welsh colleagues are here today, I was quite concerned that in North Devon we might miss out on this opportunity altogether, and I'm delighted that my honourable friend, the member for Truro and Falmouth, is here to also put in a case for the southwest of England. But I do see that if we want to actually deliver these projects, we really need to have a strategic approach that recognises all the ports, all the skills and all the opportunities right the way round the Celtic Sea. That this is a national and international opportunity that we are presented with. And I am delighted to have the support of the Celtic Sea Secretariat here today as well, because we have been working hard to drive forward this and now have a Celtic Sea Developers Alliance. And I think we've all now established that the wind blows the opposite way round in the Celtic Sea. So we're delighted to actually have an opportunity alongside our Scottish counterparts to really work across the whole country to see how we can deliver these projects. So with regards to the strategy, I really am concerned, as others in the room, about the UK supply chain. Because at the present time, everything that's planned pretty much is coming in internationally. We're not actually realising the economic benefits that these enormous turbines present. And having actually been to Blyth and seen the work that's going on up there, it's perfectly clear to me that my beautiful constituency is probably not best placed to develop a big port. However, we are the closest port to the development sites, and yet I cannot see anything locally to me that is developing the kind of maintenance system we need to service 250 floating offshore wind turbines that are coming at us in the next 5 to 10 years. In addition, as has already been discussed, our ports are not ready, and much as it's lovely to hear a bid from everyone from their port for this project, it would, in my mind, make much more sense to have a strategy that delivers the floating offshore wind manufacturing scheme, FLOMIS, and actually liaises between these ports. So yes, competition is great and it does drive innovation, but we also need to get a decision so that we haven't got 3 or 4 ports all building exactly the same thing, none of them terribly well, and say that this one can maintain, this one will build blades, so that we can actually strategically really take the opportunity that we are presented with. And I think this is demonstrated no better than when it comes to cables. So cables is a particular bugbear of mine. When you look at what's happened down the East Coast with fixed offshore wind, why on earth, now that we understand that blue carbon is released every time we disturb the ocean floor, are we not insisting that cable corridors are put in at the start of these projects so that we can actually connect to the grid? I'll come on to the problems there, but that we actually are only damaging our floor once. And I think this is something else we really need to consider when we're assessing some of these bids, is actually the full environmental impact, because we are tending to just look at the benefits of delivering the wind power from the turbines without considering for some of these international components how far they've come. How were they made? What happened to their carbon in their production? Let alone once we've actually damaged the floor. And within this part of it, I'd also like to highlight some of the very small development sites, which I'm sure at their concept were designed to give great opportunity and insight to the science. However, I have one in my own North Devon constituency, which because of the lack of a cable corridor connecting to the main grid, this one's small, it can go into a small substation. Its cables will come across 4 highly designated beaches straight through my biosphere and disturb all my sites of special scientific interest. Yes, of course.
I'm grateful to Anjali for allowing me to intervene because, in fact, she hits on a very important point here, and it is that lack of coordination and strategy. And it's not just about things like cable corridors, important though they are. It's also about how floating offshore wind and perhaps then at some later date tidal stream generation and the rest of it sits with other users of the seabed. Fishermen in my constituency, and I doubt in hers as well, are already concerned about that spatial squeeze. It shouldn't be a barrier. It would be an unnecessary conflict if we don't actually take the opportunity now to do something meaningful and hold the ring around the different people who want to use the sea and the seabed.
Thank you, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention, and I agree entirely, and I'm also grateful to the work of the Crown Estate in actually trying to tackle some of these matters, but I do think we need to take a far broader strategic approach into how we look at what is going on the floor of the ocean. And once we've actually got things into a cable, hopefully in a corridor, once we connect into the grid, again, we know that the grid is perhaps able to take 30 kilowatts to come out of the Celtic Sea, but is that really the full potential of the Celtic Sea? And what work is being done to upgrade that grid? And why have we got small substations like this development site is coming into at Yelland, when potentially it could be going into the main national grid? Or alternatively, if Yelland is going to become a proper substation, can we have a proper cable corridor so that it only has to go through our very precious beaches just the once? So I really hope that as we move forward with this, we can actually look at the full environmental impact and properly cost some of these points into the next round of contract for differences. Because I think it's important to recognise that it isn't always about price. And as was touched on by my right honourable friend, there are other factors that could be considered when awarding these contracts. The other really big concern I have as we move forward with this is around skills. That actually we don't have anyone to do any jobs in North Devon, to be honest, right now. And I would very much like to see within the contract for difference that actually those skills are incorporated and that we will be rewarding developers who are prepared to invest into STEM facilities along our ports, right the way around the Celtic Sea. So all of us along those patches are actually able to develop the next generation of engineers and bring that forward. I think with regards to strike price and price, I would just like to highlight in my closing remarks that the contract for difference auction round 4, there is concern within the industry that that price was too low because it actually already took into account some of the infrastructure that was present out there and is not really a true reflection of where the price would be moving forward. And I'd also just urge the Minister, as we look to take advantage of this, please can we really consider some of the other elements that have been discussed today about supply chain, the environment and skills, and not just price as we look to develop into our next round, contract round 5. We have the world's largest pipeline and target for this sector, and there is long-term confidence in the UK. However, it is critical that that next auction round, AR5, demonstrates that we also have the right market conditions, or we could fail to realise the investment opportunities already displayed and see it move to more competitive markets, which will have knock-on effects for subsequent contract for differences rounds. And so whilst I love that my APPG has been able to drive some change, as a former maths teacher and not an engineer, I don't think I'm the best place to drive it forward, and I very much hope that we will see some really big strategic interventions to achieve the potential of the Celtic Sea.